Planting flowers and shrubs in your garden seems like a simple enough task, but there are some things to keep in mind to ensure you have success. Today we're going to talk about planting, and we've got Tanya Visser from The Gardener here to help us and keep us on the straight and narrow. Welcome, Tanya.
I don't know about straight and narrow, Andrew, but we are going to do a beautiful French garden today.
Fantastic.
All the groundwork is done, which is looking great, and it's important that all that is done before. And certainly, once we've got all that in place, we're now getting to the exciting part, which is putting all the plants in. Do you have any idea on French contemporary garden style?
I'll be honest, I haven't a clue. So that's why we've brought you in. You're going to show us simple, easy, and I can actually follow, and so can everybody else.
First thing up is that the most important thing is that you need to prepare your soil. It's much like anything. It's the getting started and the prep. If you don't do the prep right, well, then the rest of the garden is just not going to follow suit. So it's about making sure that we get in loads of good compost initially into the soil and turn that over. That's the first step. Once that's done, and don't even think of even planting a plant until you've got that done. So we've got some bags of compost here, and we've got some of the plants that are ready, but first up, let's get this compost over the soil and then dig it in.
So we've got to do all the hard work first, and then the fun to last.
Exactly. Let's go. Yeah. First step, Andrew, is to turn this gorgeous compost that we've put in the ground. We've put it on about 5 to 6 centimeters in thickness. Now we need to turn that into the soil. Andrew, the important thing is that when you're actually turning the soil now, is that it's not just good workout, but as you're doing it, you're adding aeration. You're basically airing the soil. You're mixing all the compost in, and that is just going to help the plants that we're going to be putting in here. The other thing is, which is really good, it gives you an opportunity to have a look at what soil you've got. If it's really clay or very sandy, you might want to add extra compost into it. And at this point, you can also add a good general planting fertilizer such as 2,3,4, which will just be a good nutrition for the plants that you're going to put in.
Okay.
Okay, Andrew, next step, now that we've done all this, let's rake it out even with a metal rake so that our planting surface is good to go. And this process you're going to do for the entire area that needs to get planted. Right up, do all the prep, and if it takes you a day or 2 days, rather spend the time on it and get it done the right way.
Right, tell me we're at the fun part now.
Absolutely. We've done all the prep, now we're good to go. We've got these little guys over here, they're called Fralinia. They've been clipped into a topiary. When you clip anything like that in gardening terms, it's called topiarizing. And we're putting those in first because they're going to give the structure to the garden. Because a French garden is typically very soft and flowy, yet it does have some structure. So the structure is going to be given by the form plants. And the form plants in this case are these. Now your form plants could be also something different. They could be large strap-like leaf plants, but anything that is going to draw your eye into it, which is in repetition. And these little guys are going to be repeated throughout this garden design. So to start off with, if you can put one kind of just near about there, that's the one. One near the arch, 2 over here, 3 equidistant apart. These are going to be the first 3 plants that we're going to put in. What's important here, Andrew, is that we're seeing the way these plants are going, that they're almost following the curve. Now, if you wanted a very formal garden, you would then make them line up with your wall, using that as your median, which is your marking point. If you use that, this garden would take on a whole different feel. Okay. So let's get down to planting, because there are a couple of things that we need to get right. So let's start with this little guy over here. We basically know where he's going to go. Let's move him away. The most important thing in planting is about the depth of the hole. Now in this case, because we've already turned the soil over, our job is made far more easier. If you were just planting a plant and randomly in a bed that you hadn't turned the whole thing over, you're going to follow the same principle. We're going to dig this hole and I'll give you the honors.
Thank you.
Double the depth of the planting bag and double the width. Once your hole has been dug, you're probably going to think I could sink the entire plant into there because you've dug double the depth of the planting bag. The trick is that you're going to put a bit more compost into the planting hole mixed with some of the soil that you removed. Once you've done that, you add that soil back into the hole because that is then going to provide good, soft, friable soil so that when the roots start moving and start growing, it's easy for them to penetrate into the soil, and it just helps growing that much easier. Once we've done that, we measure the size of the hole to see if the plant fits in with the remaining soil around it. Remember, you must never bury your plant too deep. If you bury it too deep, it's likely to get collar rot and die. So the level of the surface of the planting bag must be the same level as the soil. How's the hole?
I think we're deep enough.
Good.
If I put that in there, it's going to be gone. So
Okay.
It's the heart of the bush, so we've got more than enough depth there.
Excellent. I've got some compost. We're now going to mix some of this compost with the soil that you removed.
Okay.
And the way I do it is just throw a bit onto the pile. Good 2 spadefuls should be more than enough.
Just turn it over.
Just turn it over. That's the one. And now you're going to take some of that soil and throw it back into the hole. We can now measure to see if our planting hole has been filled up to the right level for our little Freylinia to go in. So let's just pop him in there. Fantastic. Remember we said that the level of the soil in the planting bag must be the same level as the surrounding. You couldn't bury it up to here for obvious reasons. It's going to choke and die. So we're good to go. Take this little boy out. Let's grab some superphosphate.
Okay, we're feeding our hole now. I see you said with superphosphate.
Superphosphate basically enriches root growth, and this is the most important part of your planting. You need to put in a good 2 handfuls into the planting hole. You can never use too much. You can never burn the roots with superphosphate. If you have dogs, use superphosphate. If you don't have dogs, you can use bone meal, which is the organic alternative. And the reason why, if you use bone meal, the dogs will continue to dig and look for the bone, but never find it because it's in a granular formula. So those of you who wonder why your dogs dig up the gardens or your plants, it's because probably of the bone meal. You just need to mix that in a little bit, and now we can remove the planting bag and get them in. Excellent.
Right, there we go. Do we put it straight in, or as I can recall, got to tease the roots a little bit?
We can indeed, right at the bottom, just open it up a little bit. There we go, that's the one. And then in the baby goes. Lovely, perfect level. Now we take the compost that we mixed with the soil that we removed, and we just use that to fill in around the corners. Remember, making sure that every now and then just use your hand just to firm it round. You don't want to stand on it to stamp it, because all that air that we worked into the soil, you're then just going to be removing it. Excellent. And our first baby is in the ground and ready to go. We keep the soil level around here. If we were planting a tree, on the other hand, what we would do is almost create a furrow around it, because trees need far more water than shrubs in the initial stages. So we'd create a bit of a furrow, so when we watered, the water could sit here and then be fed deep into the root system. Because we're planting up this entire bed, we don't need that, and it's not a tree. Now we're going to place the rest of the form plants and then get stuck in with all the perennials and the soft, flowy, gorgeous bits. Andrew, this is looking great. We've got the balance on either side with our form plants, which are the Freylinia, the lollipops. Now we're going to start putting in the perennials, and we're going to start off with this little guy. You know this oak?
I do. Isn't this agapanthus?
That's right, agapanthus. This is indigenous, gorgeous strap-like leaves, and you can see it's completely different to the shape of the Freylinia. And that's what we want. We're wanting some contrast now, so that's going to work. Plus, with the lovely tall spikes of flowers, we're going to pop 3 of these in between our first 2 Freylinias. Yeah, let's go.
Evenly spaced again?
These guys, we're going to be slightly different. Because they don't get as large as the Freylinia are in terms of pruning, as a true perennial, we can put them really close together because one agapanthus is going to get about 30 centimeters wide by about 30 centimeters in height. So always remember to read the labels on the plants to make sure how high they're going to get and how wide they are. That's going to give you an indication of how you should plant them. You should always plant the plants with the anticipation of what their final height is going to be. Because if you overplant, you're then going to have to start removing plants and spending way too much money than you need to. Right, these guys are in place. Let's get some of the other perennials that we're going to put in. Remember, we're now looking for some lower things that are going to come right up to our edge, which is just going to soften the edge as well. And smaller plants or fine leafy plants is what we want for this look. Here we go, Andrew. We've got our last two plants in and looking spectacular. You'll notice we've got a whole lot going on here, and don't get too confused about it because at the end of the day, if you really look at it closely, we've got 5 different groups of plants, all having different leaf textures and different size flowers, and that's what gives us the contrast. And it's important to work with that. Always think, are they contrasting? Are they going to work? Because that is the look that we're wanting. We've got some beautiful grey foliage here, which works beautifully against the little mauve over here. This guy is a status, serious, good gardening 101 plant. Difficult to kill, give it a feel. Feels like paper. And these guys, if you break off the flowers, put them in a vase, they last forever. And you'll also notice that each plant is spaced very differently. And of course, that's based entirely on how big the plant is going to get in width and in height for its final growth. And that might be in perennials, 3 years, it might be with Frailinias, up to 5, 6, 7 years. We've got great contrast in texture and in height, with the tall agapanthus coming down to the status, and of course our little brachycomb. And then, for a bit of softening, the little grasses, which of course, throw them in your garden with ease because they fill up space and they look gorgeous. Now, it's time to plant. Lovely.
Pretty straightforward. It actually hasn't been that hard at all.
No, and you know why? It's all about the prep work. That first bit of digging kills you. You know, it's really getting stuck into making sure that you've turned the soil. If you get that part right, this is the fun part.
So prepare on Saturday and play on Sunday.
Something like that.
Go down and see the guys at Builders. They've got everything you need to get planting into your garden.